That's why we're here. And that's why you're going on the trip anyway. So the topic for today is the Matterhorn. And I understand you've learned a little bit about the geology. Would you hit the lights back there? Or does that one? There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So have any of you been over to Zermatt before and seen the Matterhorn?
The one in Heber City, Zermatt?
Yeah, that's the one. It's cheaper to go over there, but I mean, when I grew up I was born in Florida, raised in Ohio to 6th grade, then we moved to Idaho, and I became very interested in mountain climbing. So through my high school years and into college years, until I got too old, I would do quite a bit of climbing. So of course, Yosemite was high on my list of places to go. The Eiger over in Switzerland, long storied mountain and very dangerous mountain. And of course, sort of the quintessential mountain, the iconic mountain, is the Matterhorn, right? And you can see why. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And as you know, you teach Geology 101 and talk about glacial geomorphology and horns and so on. I mean, this is kind of the quintessential one. So I'm going to show some beautiful pictures of the Matterhorn. We're going to talk about some of the stuff we've just goofing around over there a little bit, but also talk to you about the group that first climbed the Matterhorn and some of the subsequent history. So I don't know how long it'll take, but let's go. So I think you know this much, right? I guess Dr. Harris came in and talked to you about the geology of the Matterhorn. The geology of the Alps is extremely complex, with these large thrust faults and big overturned folds called nappes, and then the erosion, which has decapitated those, and so we're seeing down into the roots of that. We've done, as you know, some work near the Matterhorn on the Gorner Gletscher, and the rocks sort of right at glacier level are red, and those are Permian sea floor rocks that have been shoved up and now metamorphosed. And I think Ron probably talked about the fact that the top of the Matterhorn is part of the African plate, or plate down to the south, and the lower part is more European. But so somewhere up in here, so here's the Zermatt Saas ophiolite. You can see that there. Here's the Monte Rosa basement. You can see that there. So these things, you'll see these things when you get over there. And when you get to the top of the Matterhorn, look for, never mind, you're not going up there.
That's how we're getting to the top.
Yeah. So when did we start going over here? 2007. So we went over there to do some work on the glacier, the Gorner Glacier here. This is the second year we went, and we decided we'd go back when it was colder. Why, I don't know. It was cold enough the first time. And we'd be getting up at 2 a.m. to go out and drill the ice, because we wanted to get cores down to some interesting reflectors that we saw in the GPR. And the ice was too warm. It was a temperate glacier, so we thought, well, we'll go back earlier the next year when it was still snow-covered, and that's when this photo was taken. But we camped on the medial moraine, and we would get dropped off our gear. And at first, when we had enough money, we'd get dropped off by helicopter. But this was our campsite, and there, staring you in the face every morning, was the west face of the Matterhorn. It was just, what?
What date was this?
This is probably, May of 2008?
Yeah, I think so.
Or April, late April or something.
2009.
Yeah.
But it was in May.
It was in May.
Group up there on May 30th or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So I don't
Okay.
know if you were there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we might have been. What you're going to do is take a train up to move the helicopter to a point right here, and you're going to hike along a beautiful trail here, I think, and look down on the glacier from there. The Rotenboden station up there. But anyway, so woke up every morning with that view. Well, I shouldn't say every morning. There's a chance you'll never see the Matterhorn. Sometimes it's socked in. Sometimes we'd have to wait for 3 or 4 or 5 days before it was clear enough to fly or to get up there. So here's a picture I took out of my tent one morning. And you can see the fog, you can see the rocks littering the moraine, and sort of an ethereal sort of picture of the Matterhorn. So this is close up looking at the face, and you can see the different rock types. You can see that contact between Europe and Africa really well displayed there.
Switch back and climbed it with their stuff.
Yeah, that's this. Yeah, we dug this with a shovel. Yeah. That fracture always worries me. It seems like if you got a big enough earthquake, you might have a Matterhorn that looks like that after all. Now, on this trip, the Klein Matterhorn, means little. So, speaking of Klein Matterhorn, are you going to go on the tram to the Klein Matterhorn? So, behind us to the south, we're almost in Italy. We're still in Switzerland. The pass here is called the Theodal Pass. All right? And the tram will take you right up there. In fact, you might see a little bit of glare here. Can you see that? Right there. See some glare? I took this picture out of the tram going up to the Klein Matterhorn. So you'll see this again if the weather's good enough. You go right past the face. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. Here's Dave Tinney lent me this photo. So he had a really good telephoto. You can see the tippy top. And sometimes the mountain will create its own weather. And it's not unique to the Matterhorn. But you'll have cold, humid air blowing and hitting it. And then it undergoes what's called adiabatic cooling. And that vapor, or that gas, vapor, goes directly to a solid stage without going through a liquid stage. And so it hits there and it freezes and turns into ice. And what we're seeing is a halo of ice crystals coming off the top. Well, the Matterhorn looks different from different views. The quintessential view is from Zermatt, looking up at the north face and the east face. This is what it looks like from Italy. You'll see it from this side? Okay. This is called the Lion Ridge. And the Italians first tried to climb the Matterhorn from that side. In fact, Edward Whymper, who we'll talk about a little bit later, who was the first to climb the Matterhorn, was actually hooked up with a couple of Italians. And they had been making efforts to climb. In fact, Edward Whymper had this, I can't remember his name, it's Cassine or something like that. We'll just call it that you can correct me later. But in 1865, he had contracted with this Italian guide, and they had made some attempts from this side, and the weather precluded them getting up there. And the guide was almost giddy because he had another group coming in that was paying even more money. So he untethered himself from Whymper, much to Whymper's sort of disappointment, because he thought, well, the weather might turn, we still might have another chance. So this Italian gentleman and his next group of clients, at the same time that Whymper and his group were coming up the other side from Switzerland, were making their way, and they actually got to about here within 500 feet of the summit and thought, okay, we're going to get it. And they looked up, and there were Whymper and his 6 colleagues looking down from the summit, waving at them. So people have been trying to climb the mountain for a very long time. It's sort of interesting that there were 2 groups that were just, so close to each other. But this is the Italian side. This is the north face and east face of the Matterhorn. So it looks remarkably different from different angles, and each angle is really quite spectacular and quite beautiful. This is the Italian-Swiss frontier, and along with the Breithorn, and so that's Switzerland. Off to the south is is it the Aosta Valley, or whatever valley that is off to the south. This is the north face, and there are many routes up here. There was a German fellow, I think it was in 2015, started out from the hut, which I'll show you where that is, and climbing all by himself, got up to the top in 1 hour and 46 minutes. So that's the speed record now. That seems to be a big deal in mountaineering, like on El Capitan and other things. Let's get about 4,000 feet.
Vertical. Wow.
Yeah, so you have to be in good shape.
What year was that?
I think it was in 2015. So, this is a picture that I took in 2008. Or was it 2009? I can't remember. Myself and Josh Marr and Durbin. What's Durbin's last name? How many on here? Keeler? Yeah, okay. We had a day or two before we were scheduled to head off to the glacier, so we decided that we would go hike up as far as we could. We wanted to at least get to the Hornley Hut. And so we hiked up to there and actually got up to here, which is really the base of the technical climbing. But as you get closer and closer, the angles, the view, it changes. I don't know how many thousand pictures I took because I thought, okay, we take 10 more steps. The perspective changed a little bit more. I got to get a bunch of pictures, take these, panoramas and things. But again, here we are on these red Permian seafloor metamorphosed deposits. And then here are here's the next thrust sheet above that. The scale of this thing is deceptive until you get close to. Whoops.
What's the elevation of that?
Shoot, I can't.
High enough.
Let's see. The peak is what, 14,000 feet. So it's at about 10,500, about 10,500. So there are many routes up the Matterhorn now. So if you're interested in climbing the Matterhorn, I guess currently over the last few years, there are up to 3,000 people that summit every year. So if you do it, you can feel good about yourself, but you haven't really done anything all that unique, right? Since it was first climbed in 1865, there have been about 500 people who have died on the Matterhorn. So it's still a dangerous mountain, although it's not the most technical climb in the world. But here are some relatively technical climbs on the west side. This is the original route. This is called the Hornley Ridge, Hornli. And it faces down towards Zermatt. Again, Whymper had been working on the backside with the Italian guide. And when he got dumped, he came over the Theodal Pass, went down into Zermatt, was staying at the Monte Rosa Hotel, which was in fact the headquarters for the Alpine Club. And so people who were interested in climbing would stay there, and then they could find partners and so on. And that's the route they took. I'll go into that in a minute. This is the west side again, west face, looking towards west face, looking towards the east, and you can see a number of routes up there. Yeah, it was this, the Lion Ridge, and this is the south side. So anyway, and another route. Okay, you get the idea. Here you can see some climbers on the summit of the Matterhorn. This is, again, a picture that Dave Tingey took back in 2009 with a really good telephoto lens. And from a different angle, you can see there's an iron cross up there, and there's the true summit and the fake summit. But anyway. So the first person to climb it, one of the first people to climb it, I guess the de facto leader of the group and sort of motivating force behind it was Edward Whymper, who was in his 20s at the time. Edward Whymper was a Brit, and he was also a naturalist and a mountaineer, and he climbed a number of other peaks in the Alps. And back in sort of this golden era of climbing, in fact, the golden era of climbing came to an end when the Matterhorn was finally climbed. That was sort of the last plum hanging there. Not to say that the most difficult climbs in the Alps had been made at that point, The north wall of the Eiger was not climbed until the 1930s. And Hitler wanted to have a team of Nazis, Aryans, be the first to climb the most difficult wall in all of the Alps and have that tribute come to the Nazi Germany. And there are famous places on that wall now, the Nordwand, named after them because they died there.
When was the Golden Era?
The Golden Era was about 1800, 1865. It was just getting up to the top of them. So the Eiger had been climbed, but from easier ridges. So this was really the last big peak in the Alps that had not seen human, on top. So
They have really high tech equipment.
yeah. I'll show you his tent here in a second. So here he is at about the time he climbed the Matterhorn, was trying to climb again from the Italian side, like I said, was sort of rebuffed, headed, and just a hike up over the Theodal Pass and down the other side takes a lot of effort. So he gets there, goes to the Monte Rosa Hotel, and he hooks up with two Swiss guides, Peter Taugwalder, father and son, who were both guides. There was a young 20-year-old Lord, what is his name? But a young, wealthy Brit that was there, and then two other Brits that were there. And so there were 7 of them that decided they would give it a go from the Swiss side. Here's the type of equipment they had. Here's his climbing staff with here now use ice axes that are about this long or really fancy with hooks and things. But this was both a walking stick and a climbing adze. Here's his canvas tent. They had hemp ropes, and he had I can't remember what that thing. Oh, a hook for sort of looping it on things and pulling yourself up. There's a Matterhorn museum you can visit if you want to. Here's a sketch of the Italian side of the Matterhorn, or of this is the south face, that Whymper did. So he was really a good artist, too. He would document his travels very nicely, both in word and in ink. This is the view that you will have when you get up to the Klein Matterhorn, when you get up to the top of the tram and look back from a little view station. So this is a picture that we took back in 2009, I believe. But here's that same view. Here's the face that you normally see. Here's that fracture I pointed out earlier. Here's the Hornley Ridge. And then there's this just very steep, gnarly south face. And that's that same image that or picture. He did a spectacular job of catching the flavor and shape of that.
Could have been a geologist, because that skill was mandatory for doing geology.
It was. Yeah, and Ken Hamblin was always, one of our former professors, was always keen on that, was I want you to draw things, and I want you to show what's there, not just, draw an artsy thing, but I wanted to show relationships and patterns. So, okay, so here's the Monte Rosa Hotel. This area off to here is called the Monte Rosa Massif. And I'll show you Monte Rosa, and so I'll get to that in just a second. But anyway, here's the Monte Rosa Hotel. Are you staying at the Tannenhof? Okay, so your hotel is right here, and when you walk out of the front door of the motel, you'll walk right into the front of the Monte Rosa Motel, and you can see the Matterhorn. So on July 13th of 1865, yeah, they got on top the 14th, but anyway, yeah, maybe they shouldn't have left 13th. You can see how far they had to go. So we took a tram up to that point, to Schwartzy, or Black Lake, and we hiked up on top of that and on up and on, and man, that was a long, long hike. They started down here and had to go through, they got up to here on the 13th. So that was a long, long hike in and of itself. Right here is a plaque on the Monte Rosa Hotel with this bronze casting or bust of Whymper as an older gentleman. And so Edward Whymper, 1840 to 1911, and it says on July 14th, which is wrong because they got some of the 14th, 1865, he set forth from this hotel with his companions and guides and completed the first successful ascent of the Matterhorn. Okay. This is the Tannenhof where you will stay. And the owner of the Tannenhof, when we'd go in there, there'd be an old gentleman that would be sitting on a chair with sort of a grumpy look on his face. And when we talked to yeah, it wasn't John this time. It was somebody actually looked older and grumpier. It's Christiana is the wonderful woman who manages it now, and she'll take good care of you. But we chatted with him a few times. He's a mountain guide. That's how he made the money to get the hotels. He has a couple of them now. And he has been up to the top of the Matterhorn over 1,000 times.
Wow.
That would get, I mean, it'd be cool the first 500 times. After that, it's...
Sure, become grumpy too.
Yeah. So let's go back to closer to 1865 than to 2009. Here's the Monte Rosa. Here's the church. And so he and his companions took off and climbed, switchbacked up, and got up to about here on their first day, and felt like they were making good time, pitched their canvas tents, and had probably a fairly fitful night's sleep. And so nowadays, if you're climbing, so here you can see the spur of Permian seafloor and the greenish from the Austrian or African plate. There is a hut right up here on top of these green schists. It's called the Hornley Hut. Used to be fairly good size. They've remodeled it and actually downsized it. They're trying to and they're not allowing camping anymore. They're really trying to reduce the number of people that are going up and down Mountain Matterhorn. So here's some pictures. Here's some of the things that Whymper and his colleagues would have seen as they got closer. And just imagine, your goal is the top. Nobody's ever been there before. Nobody has ever really even explored this route. So first of all, you walk along these red beds, as we did, and then there's a cleft. You get through a cleft in the red beds and get out on the other side. And now, looking up, you can see the hut. You're now into the green schists, and you're climbing up this steep switchback to get up on top of that. And well, I don't know. It looks like that's almost looks like it's leaning over after a point. Whoops. And so you get up to the hut, and here it is, just sort of perched up here on the bare bedrock. When we were there was a helicopter from Air Zermatt that came in to supply the hut. They bring food in, so the night before, you can stay at the hut and get a good meal and drinks and other things. And then we scampered on past the hut and went up to about here, and really this is where you would need to rope up. So this was as close to the start of the climb, and we felt pretty good just having climbed 3,000 feet after getting off the train just to get to here. And so now we're up above the hut looking back, and there's this crucifix here. We're looking back towards the east. Here's the Gorner Gletscher, and the research we were doing was on this subglacier called the Zwillingsgletscher. But this is Monte Rosa. This is Liscum Peak, and the Italian-Swiss border runs here. Monte Rosa is predominantly a granite that's been brought in on the nap sheets. It's called Monte Rosa. What do you think that would mean? Monte Rosa, Red Mountain or Pink Mountain? Yeah, this is in the canton of Valais, and the Rosa derives from a local term which means glaciers. So Monte Rosa really, when it was named, it meant the mountain of glaciers. Although now we think of Monte Rosa as the color. And so we camp up around the corner. So every morning we'd look up, and Monte Rosa would be right there next to us, Liscum Peak. Here's the top of the glacier feeding in. From time to time, we would see some avalanches coming off. We were here on a particular rainy night. I don't know if you can you see that dark line right there? This is a moraine. So the glaciers used to be up this far. So you have these very steep moraines that are stranded, and it was really raining hard, and that water seeps through the morainal material and undercuts it. So from time to time, it sounds like there were 747s circling overhead all night. It's just this noise, and and so we get out the next morning and start looking around, and you just see these rock falls, these just spectacular, just almost, without pause if it had been raining the night before. So we'd have to be careful as we did our work over here to make sure we didn't get too close to where the rock falls were coming off. But it was kind of cool to see that process. Here's the Rotenboden train comes up to about here, and this is where you'll get out and you'll hike along the wall of that side of the canyon, north wall. And so, so this is looking down on the Hornley Hut. And when we were there were a bunch of tents for climbers out here. They don't allow that anymore. If you look really, really, really carefully, you'll see another hut over here. Europeans in the mountains love their huts. You can be sort of in the middle, it's like climbing up Mount Timpanogos and you're just about the end of your wits and you're tired and you're hungry. And all of a sudden there's a hut and you can go and have, a steak dinner and a cold Coke and everything. I mean, it's really a great system.
I didn't see that on Timpanogos.
Yeah, no, they must have gotten rid of it. There's a hut right there. There used to be one, right here within the circle of moraines. There used to be one right here made of beautiful stone. And the whole time we were doing work, there were helicopters coming in, bringing in building materials. You can imagine how much it would cost to build things over here. And here's what that hut looks like. And it's really ergonomic. It's really sort of nature-friendly. It has solar arrays to help heat it. And so you just, if you're going to be hiking in here, climbing Monte Rosa, then you just call ahead and make the reservations, and you could stay there. I can't remember how many it does. Yeah, it can hold quite a few. And here you can see the granitic rocks of the Monte Rosa part of the Alpine belt. This is the old hut that we used to see up above there. And the last year we were there, or second last year we were there, it was our last day, and we were walking out, and we had to cross the glacier and then go up this steep ladder and then hike along the edge of the valley. Well, we were walking across the glacier just down at the base of this, and then we heard this beep, beep, and I'd heard that before in quarries, before they blast. It just seemed really out of place. All of a sudden, boom! There's this huge explosion, and this thing just went up in a shower of rocks. So the Army Corps had been coming in, of engineers essentially, planning explosives to do a demolition on this after they got the Olympic. Why they couldn't, I don't know.
They blow it to pieces. I don't understand. They want to make it as small as pieces possible.
They did.
And then clean it up.
Yeah. They just were returning it to nature, I guess. But yeah, it was pretty impressive. I was like, what the heck? And then just boom, all this stuff came. Anyway, that was kind of cool. I know. How many people get to see a hut get blown up before their eyes? So anyway, back to the Hornley hut there. So here are Durbin and Josh, and this is the first roped part. So if you're going to go climb the Hornley Ridge of the Matterhorn, this is where you would finally rope up. This is where on that fateful day, the 14th of July, 1865, Edward Whymper and the two Taugwalders and Haddock and Logan, and one of the names is still escaping me, started their dreams to become the first to climb the Matterhorn. And up they went. And here is a telephoto view of part of the Hornley Ridge. You can see some footprints here, and you can actually see a climber right there, or two climbers right there. So in terms of being a technical route, it's not the most technical in the world. It's really just sort of hand over, fist and foot. There's lots of little ledges. Not to say that when you go out on, around the corner that there's not a lot of exposure that you would feel, but in terms of of tiny little handholds and cracks and things you'd have to climb. It's not technical in that sense. There's a lot of bucket holds, and it's like climbing a very steep set of stairs to a large degree.
So it's almost like a scramble, not.
Yeah, it is. It's like no, up towards the top on the shoulder there are some iffy parts, but. So finally, late or about early afternoon on the 14th, Whymper and his group finally got to the summit of the Matterhorn and stayed there for an hour, and they were celebrating and ecstatic of the fact that they had solved the final problem in the Alps and brought the golden age of climbing the Alps to a close. So an hour later, they turn around, decide that they need to come down, and like on so many mountains, the descent is really more dangerous than the ascent. Especially since 3 of the people that were on the ropes that day really had very little, if any, mountaineering experience. So on the way down, they were all roped together. Edward Whymper was in the back. Young Peter Taugweiler was in front of him. Peter Taugweiler, the senior, was in front of him. And then leading the group was Michael Kroes, who was a Swiss mountain guide. And he was at the front of the rope. They were coming down sort of a steep segment. And he was trying to help load, I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, the Lord, it'll come to me. Help him down with his footing, and that young man slipped. And when he slipped, it took out Michael Kroes' legs. And so both of them were sort of sliding, and that pulled the next 2 who weren't paying attention off of their holds. And they heard them yell, so the other 3 sort of got steadied. Taugweiler wrapped the rope quickly around a horn of rock that was sitting there, and it held for a moment. But being an old hemp rope and on some sharp edges, it frayed and the rope snapped. And those 4, they could hear him yelling, and they just could, they looked, they could see him sort of going, tumbling, and then they went out of sight. They fell 4,000 feet, sort of tumbling and hitting ledges and snow slopes as they went, and ended up down on the glacier on the east side or west side. Of course, they yelled and yelled, didn't get any response back, and they knew, that the worst had happened. And so this etching, this drawing depicts the moment that rope broke. Some people accused, in fact, there were some hearings, there were some legal proceedings. Some people suggested that maybe Peter Taugweiler, thinking that they were all going to get pulled off, actually cut the rope to save him and the rest. But after they had done the investigation, got testimony and other things, they determined that the rope was just not strong. And in fact, they had a few ropes with them, and it was in fact the weaker of the ropes they had that they were using at the time, unfortunately. But as you can imagine, when they got back down, then it was sort of, bittersweet thing to come back heroes for having conquered the Matterhorn, but yet have to somehow account for the deaths of 4 people. So here's Charles Hudson, who was a novice on the rope. Here's Michael Kroes, the Swiss mountaineer. This is young Peter Taugweiler, and this is Peter the Elder with some other clients. This picture was taken a couple of years later when they were leading some climbers up Mont Blanc, which is the highest mountain over in France, in the Alps. So this is the church downtown of Zermatt. And if you go past the church, there's a little brook or a little river or a little stream that's all sort of walled in and everything. Now there's a little tiny bridge. You don't even know you've gone across a bridge. The French word for bridge is pont, P-O-N-T, or pont. And right over here is the Café du Pont, and they have the best fondue. So if you like cheese fondue, go there. And there's an older gentleman who's a very good friend of ours now. We call him Jaime. We don't know what his name is, but he must be in his 70s. has this really scruffy salt and pepper beard. And you go in, he welcomes you, seats you, and then he'll come over and sort of force feed you fondue. Oh, this is how you do it. And he'll start pushing food in your mouth. And things. But the fondue is just spectacular. It's sort of pricey, so you should save or go with a couple other people. But if you turn here and walk down behind the church, there's a climber's graveyard. And so the church, we're looking back towards the west, and the church would be up above the purview of this picture. But in this part of the graveyard, this is the tombstone for Michael Kroes, who was the Swiss, who was at the front of the rope, who got knocked off and was one of the 4 that fell. These are the graves for 2 of the other climbers that fell that day. And then this is a plaque in honor of local heroes, the Peter Togwaller, father and son, who were the first to climb the Matterhorn in 1865. But as you wander around the graveyard, you'll see a number of monuments, a number of headstones. A number of these are people who died on the Matterhorn. Others died on the Weisshorn or the Breithorn or any of the other peaks in the Monte Rosa Massif there, just up from Zermatt. So you can see the church there, and then so Michael Kroes, Michel Auguste Kroes, born around the valley of Chamonix, and then it goes on tells about a little bit about him. And here are the tombs for Hudson and Hadow, and that thing for those. So here's a news blurb from 2015. The dead bodies of 2 missing British climbers have been found on the Matterhorn. It seems they were surprised by bad weather and froze to death. 2 men have been missing since Thursday, but the severe weather delayed research efforts. They most likely died that night. Search party found them some 4,000 meters above sea level, and so on. Basically just to say that even though 3,000 people a year climb the Matterhorn, it's still a very dangerous mountain. That area, very craggy peaks, very isolated. When we would, the reason there's Zermatt was not to take us to the glacier and back, although they make a lot of money now taking building supplies here and there. But they really started out as a rescue mission. And they still do a lot of search and rescue. And a lot of that is done by helicopter. And these pilots are absolutely amazing. The things they can do at high altitude and with a rotor helicopter is amazing.
Yeah, I was just looking at this to compare. So, like, so you sent me a one 500 people died on Matterhorn. On Everest, without a T. On Everest, it's about 280 people have died, and on K2, about 8 people have died.
80 and 500 on the Matterhorn.
A lot less people climb K2.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to know what you're doing.
Some top 10 list, David Letterman top 10 list or something, top 9. Just a couple who cares things. So it's 14,692 feet, 12th highest peak, but it's taller than Mount Whitney, which is the highest peak in the lower 48. Straddles 2 countries, Switzerland, Italy. Has 3 common names, the German Matterhorn, the Italian name is Cervino. In French, it's Mont Cervin. Likely originated with the Latin word for forest. Anyway, you can read that in deer. The first ascent, July 14, 1865, from the Swiss side, ended a race that lasted nearly a decade, came down to the wire with rivals on the Italian side poised 1,200 feet below the top when Whymper and Kroes first got to the summit. The victory was marred, of course, by the descent and the death of 4 climbers. The second route up the Matterhorn, the Lion Ridge from Italy, was completed 3 days later. So that same guy who was disappointed to see the climbers on the summit went down, sort of collected himself, came back with some other climbers, and 3 days later they made it. And so the second route up the Matterhorn was established pretty quickly. About 3,000 people summit annually, however, starting this year by reducing the size of the hut at the base of the most popular route, which is the original, and eliminating camping, Swiss officials hope to slash the number of climbers by as much as 1/3. and reduce crowding on the mountain. 80% of Matterhorn climbers are either guides or clients, so the vast majority are guided to the top. At one point they're thinking, well, these are, it's the Swiss anyway. They put a tunnel through the Eiger up to the top, so why can't we get a tram up to the top of the Matterhorn or a train? So there were actually some serious, discussion, and I think fortunately they decide not to do that. And then this is a very famous poster. If you go to the Matterhorn up at Midway, at the Zermatt up there, you'll see these posters everywhere. Anyway, this was rendered by Émile Cardineau, 1903. And as far as people know, it's the first tourism poster for Zermatt and maybe the first modern travel poster. And now on July 15th, starting July 14th, the mountain will be closed to climbing just in honor, in remembrance of that. So last year was the 150th anniversary of first climb, and there were all sorts of things going on in Zermatt, and they had some reenactments of people dressed like the original climbers with hemp ropes, and they went up and down. But
they were there. They had a string of lights at the
yeah,
of the Matterhorn all the way to the top.
yeah. So at night you could see that. Wow, that would have been cool. Anyway, here are some of my erstwhile Swiss companions on some of our efforts over there.
Who's that scraggly looking dude in the middle?
Yeah,
The homeless person.
that was, yeah. you know that crazy guy at the restaurant I was telling you about? Yeah, okay.
His brother?
Yeah, that's his brother. Anyway, so I'll oh man, that's making me hungry.
What's the name of the restaurant?
Cafe Dupont, Cafe of the Bridge. And then we'll leave you with that one. So, okay. Wish I was going to be there with you guys and gals.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any other questions, thoughts, objections? Objections? I think we should go too.
We still have one space.
Even if we lose half the crowd, that's okay. Unless we just cry. Okay. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week. You have to come for a rent. We did 2 perfect lectures.
Two.
What are you talking about?
My own dam and hydrology of the water there.
More and more all the time, right?
And everything's sinking in.
Yeah.
And the people.
The fish do too.
The fish do too. Yeah, there's just swimming there on the floor. Too disgusting.
So I'm gonna try.
It's a perfect ecosystem.
Well, it sounds like the Tiber River was a mess.
So there's sewage. So you served in Switzerland. So how much French did you learn?
I was French.
Really? So you learned French instead of Swiss? So how do you, Cafe Dupont, how do you spell
Cafe
that?
Dupont. Cafe.
Yeah, I got that.
U,
Yeah.
above the, and then P on feet bridge.
Hey, I spelled it right.
Fondue.